Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I just want to show you a little bit of the Forgotten City. This is a game that I played recently in which we're going to find a forgotten Roman city under the earth over here. We're off looking for some guy named Al, and we're going to some ruins. So I don't want to tell you too much because this is sort of a mystery game with a whole plot that I don't want to ruin for anybody. But this is a also just a really fun little experiment with creating a Roman city and giving a taste of Roman life in the course of a video game. And so I really thought that was very cool. So if you can't tell, this is actually a Skyrim mod that got turned into a full game, and I find that hilarious, and I'm totally here for it. So this is a Skyrim mod that is now an entire game about ancient Rome. So basically, you come here. We're going to examine this backpack full of hiking clothes. And then we're going to look at this note. And if it reads on too long, we'll just continue after it's done.
If you're reading this, it means I've discovered the entrance to an ancient Roman city hidden deep underground. Its existence is long forgotten.
All right, so he's going
All
to sit here and
knowledge
read it.
of
We'll
it
come back in a
lost,
second.
except in the Latin inscription here. It reads, "You who wish to enter the city, step forth and be judged. The virtuous shall be rewarded with eternal life in paradise. The wicked shall find themselves showered in gold, but in vain, for this shall be their final resting place."
So here we are, and basically you can try to wander around inside here a little bit, but more or less you're going to go through the floor. Oh no, this is taking a minute here. Did I balance better than I thought? We're going to go down. Falling, falling, falling. And boom, we're in an ancient Roman city. And again, the controls really do feel just like playing Skyrim, so it's super easy if you've played it before. So if you look around, there are all these creepy statues, and there was a warning about making sure that the many don't suffer for the sins of the one. And there's a lot to do with something called the Golden Rule in this town that you'll discover very quickly. So you can look around, kind of creepy. I will tell you, there's very little combat in this game, but especially in the early game. But later in the game, there are some combat sequences that I personally was not expecting, and I found sort of horrifying. So not here, not at the beginning. You're safe for a while, but do expect later in the game that there will be some terrifying things that happen. I did not enjoy that part, to be real, but everything about this game, otherwise, I actually did really enjoy. So we're gonna come out through this like bathhouse, basically, and we're just gonna walk along and move through these ruins. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of move along. We're gonna fast forward to being in the city. So this is the ruins of it, but you can see it as a living place briefly before we conclude this review. And I want to make sure that I give some good comments about the historicity of the game and all that. So BRB. So I've gone through a portal into the past, or into this place, and here I am. I'm in a lovely Roman city. We're going to meet our first little buddy, Galerius, but we're going to ignore him very rudely. Alright, so Galerius is actually really sweet, and he's very enjoyable to talk to in the game. But I wanted to just kind of show you the city. So you go into this city, and that golden rule that Galerius mentions is quite central to the plotline. So basically, once you go talk to Cynthius, he talks to you more. Essentially, whenever somebody commits a sin in this town, the statues come to life and shoot you and turn everybody into gold. So you're trying to figure out who is going to break the golden rule, and you keep looping through time in order to solve mysteries, help people around here, and figure out how to save the town. So for the rest of it, I'm just going to kind of run around and show you Roman stuff because it's fun. There's a lot of cool graffiti and all kinds of neat little things around here. So I wanted to sort of talk about the game's historical value or lack thereof while walking around the city. So I do want to say, first of all, the Forgotten City is clearly quite the labor of love. It's really clear that people really enjoyed making this, and they got into kind of the Romanness of it. So here's like a fun little graffiti. It looks like a real bit of Latin graffiti. So don't steal anything, don't hurt anyone, don't, and then you get to see that it doesn't quite get finished. But there's all kinds of graffiti around here. Some of it's rude. It's hilarious to me. The architecture looks pretty good. And there are different characters that you're going to meet along the way who really do fulfill a lot of Roman roles. So, like, there's a Vestal Virgin who runs the election. There are a bunch of shopkeepers from all over the Roman world. I think the game did a really good job, like, showcasing the diversity of the Roman world and the kinds of people who could make their way to Rome, just as they've made their way to this forgotten city. And there's just so much to appreciate about all of that. There's a little forum. We've got some really nice temples that you can explore with like new friends that you'll meet in the temples. There's just generally a whole lot to appreciate. However, I don't necessarily want to spoil things for you. I do want to talk a bit about the history aspects of this. So we're going to skip. So we're just going to kind of head this way. And just walk to the amphitheater and chat for the rest of our time. So check it out. We have a nice little amphitheater. So pretty. What a great place to be. And we can just explore this while we're here. I don't want to spoil, again, too much for you because there are mysteries here. However, there are definitely some Roman things that I want to talk about. So, one, this game really does make an effort to talk to you about the Roman world and like the kind of people who could be there, the kind of jobs they could have. There are some weird ways in which Roman society is presented that don't quite work. So, I will mention first that this game doesn't quite get the idea of Roman citizenship down right, which is sort of intriguing. I wonder kind of what was going on with that. So, basically, all the men in this city appear able to vote, but there's no discussion of whether they're citizens or not, only whether they are foreigners or not. But that's not really how the Romans thought about this. Actually, I'm not the first person to make that point. There's a really, really nice set of articles by Hamish Cameron, who is an upcoming guest on my podcast, who wrote about that as one of the issues in the Forgotten City, which is kind of interesting. The other thing that he talks about that is, of course, a hobby horse of mine, if you've read any of my work on gladiators, is that slavery is a major part of Roman life in the Roman world, but there are no slaves in this game. They get mentioned, and there's debt bondage that happens within the game. But the idea of people arriving here and being slaves, it's just sort of conveniently glossed over, ignored. There's actually a comment that Sentius, the magistrate, makes early on, where he's like, oh, well, gladiators are mostly in it for the glory. They're volunteers. And if you know anything about gladiators, especially if you've read my like bajillion part article about it, you know that that's not true. So, this game definitely triggers a few of my little hobby horses. But overall, I would say that they did a really good job of trying to give you a flavor of Roman life, of the different kinds of people who are here, the different religions they practice, and some of the cultural tensions that they feel as well. There are Christians hiding out in this town, and you'll meet them. There are Greeks who feel weird about the Romans taking over their culture and their gods and their monuments. There are Egyptians who feel weird about the Greeks doing that. And so, there's just a lot to explore socially here, as well as people to get to know. And there's definitely something super satisfying about that. I will say, I don't want to give away, again, too much of the story. But one thing that's kind of interesting about this game is that its view of history ends up being very strangely, I guess, supersessionist. It's very much like the idea that you had a previous society that has its time in the sun, and then the next empire rises and they have their time in the sun and builds on top of the old one. And then the next empire rises and they build on top of the previous empire, and, so on and so on. So, Romans building directly on Greeks, building directly on Egyptians, and then a bit more that I don't want to talk about. But I do find that view of history questionable. I don't necessarily think of history as progressing in a straight line, or as societies, that existed at the same time at various power levels as being, completely knocked out by others. There's something about that I think is a little unfair and that isn't quite right. However, I did like that this game made the effort to look at things like cultural appropriation and how things change with history and how empires rise and fall, and like the kind of impact that might have had on people of the future who look at the past and try to figure out what they want to do with it themselves. And so this game makes some really interesting points about a number of things. So as you mentioned, as we talked about, the golden rule is a tough thing, because basically everybody can die if one person messes up. So there are a lot of really interesting questions that are raised about what is a sin? What can somebody do that's going to get everybody killed? And how does that change culturally? Because to us as modern people, there is something really wrong with a lot of things the Romans were doing that don't appear to be a sin in this town. And so that's part of the mystery, right? So the statues whisper. By the way, it's a little creepy, but cool. Um, but so there's lots of individual choice and moral questions kind of embedded in these ideas about culture and about is it okay to lock this dude up? You'll meet him, and why or why not? There are basically just a lot of different individual moral questions that come up in the course of this game. Meanwhile, there are also interesting cultural suppositions and questions that come up that are based on, oh, well, if this is a Roman city, why is it Roman? There's a little Lararium here, so nice and Roman. If that's true, then how do we incorporate, the Greek roots of Roman things or the Egyptian past as well? If we're looking at the ancient past, what does that mean and who's involved, who counts? This game does at least a very good job of asking those kinds of questions, and that's something that I personally really appreciate. I think that is something that makes the Forgotten City really special. So even if it's not a spot on, like note for note, authentic feeling version of ancient Rome to me as a Roman historian, I do think that this game presents a lot of things that are very, very interesting and that are well worth your time in your exploration. I genuinely liked playing this game. I definitely want to do it again, maybe sometime in the future. And as we get stuck into this conversation with Horatius, just triggered, I figured this is a good time to end the review. So he's going to take us to Sentius, but I'm not going to take you there. I think that we will stop here. But The Forgotten City is a game full of mystery. It's a good time. You really get to know these characters and to like them or maybe hate them, depending on how they treat you or how you treat them. But there's a lot to enjoy here. And I think that for a game that I think it took me 8 hours to get through the whole thing, and that was with a lot of kind of slow exploration. I think it's well worth your time, and it was a very positive experience for me. I was really happy to see a game that thinks so much about the Roman world appear in this way for people to enjoy. So give it a shot. If you get to the ending, I might be interested in talking about it more. And I will link Hamish Cameron's pieces about this in the bottom in the show notes so that you can get a look at those as well, because they were quite the interesting read. So thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, maybe support me on Patreon so I can make more videos, ask questions, and most of all, happy gaming.